Good evening and welcome to the Eastbourne Park Run lockdown live stream. I think we're actually on the 6th episode, but it's great that you could join us this evening, and wherever you are, just tell us what your day's been like today. It's been warm, sunny, beautiful by the coast in the southeast of England. Just let us know where you're hailing from this evening. So whether you're joining us by YouTube or joining us through Facebook, you're both equally welcome. Please do chat away. We'll pick up the comments as we go through the show and hopefully we'll be able to respond to them. Got a pretty packed evening this evening, but I think what we need to do is get on our run director, and he is the irrepressible, the indefatigable, and the often incandescent. It's Simon Jones. Simon, good evening. How you doing?
I'm all right. Incandescent, is that the shimmery mermaidy material?
It can be. It's about heating something until it just gives off a glow, an aura, but it has positive connotations as well as negative.
I still don't understand any of these words that you keep explaining me as, but thank you. It's lovely to be on again which I do believe is our 6th. So happy days.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's going to be a fun-packed show. So we've got a couple of doctors in the waiting room, so to speak. We'll bring them on in a bit. Today's show, we're going to be looking at everything from pain to injury to illness, maybe in recovery from surgery, trying to sort your diet out so that if you're a very keen runner or you're trying to aspire to one, then great. This is definitely going to be the show for you. But also coming up, we're going to be looking at a running fact quiz. And in the news, I have some exciting things as well. So Simon, I think we'd probably better get on with this, hadn't we?
Yeah, I think we better.
All right. So shall we hit the news? Oh, in fact, no, let's go for an icebreaker. I've decided to use this question. What is the funniest doctor joke that you know? And I think what we'll have to do is that for anyone that can come up with a doctor joke that's actually running related, you're going to get a lot of kudos points. I mean, we've tried giving away chocolate, tried to give away money, tried to give away shoes, but nobody's around to be able to pick it up because of COVID restrictions. So it's just easier to give you lots of kudos. So come on then, what's your funniest doctor joke? And of course, it'll be related to later in the show. Simon, have you got one? Spur of the moment thing.
No, do you know what? The only one I can always think of is a knock joke. So it's knock knock.
Who's there?
Doctor.
Doctor Who. Terrible.
It's one of those dad jokes, isn't it? So it's I can't think of anything else apart from that, unfortunately.
Okay. Doctor, I feel like I'm a pair of curtains. Oh, shut up, man, and pull yourself together.
Pull yourself together.
Excellent. And that is the level of the show, I'm afraid, everybody. If you're looking for something a little bit more constructive, stay tuned, please do. Right, let's get on with the news, shall we? And in the news, we have Parkrun HQ updates. Simon, something was happening yesterday. You were there, I was there, quite a few other people were there. Just bring up a couple of photos just to show the world. Do you want to just introduce us as to what was going on?
So, as we announced a couple of weeks ago, Parkrun have released a COVID framework. So, in the event that Parkrun resumes whilst COVID-19 is still heavily active, they've put some guidance in place that we can kind of work towards and kind of see what they've kind of given us some clues of what we can do and possibly can't do, so and things that we can work towards, so that when Parkrun comes back, how we can do it in a COVID friendly way. And that doesn't mean we can invite COVID to come and run the course with us, but that we can mitigate as much risk as possible. So yesterday there were some core volunteers, and the event directors were there. You and myself were there, and some key volunteers were there as well to kind of discuss and go through options. So, we looked at things like potentially changing the course, so there's less movement between people, changing the start-finish location, just trying to mitigate the risk so that we can maintain social distancing, we can have an event that your risk of milling around and being around people is reduced as much as possible. And knowing how Eastbourne, especially on the winter course, is an out and back course, so for half the run you run one way and then you turn around and come back, there's going to be time where you're running with other people. So it's looking at ways in which we can mitigate that so that you're only ever running in one direction and not having to come back on yourself as much as possible. So there's lots of things that we talked about, and great ideas that came up, and things like that. So it's all work in progress, but I think it was good to have these discussions early with, because we don't know when Parkrun's coming back yet. As Parkrun HQ have said, it will only come back. It's an all or nothing. So it'll only come back when it's right across the board. So, knowing that there are pockets across the UK that are under lockdown restrictions, local restrictions, there's no point. Let's say, for argument's sake, we're in Eastbourne. We've got Seaford, we've got Hastings, all within a very close very close proximity to Eastbourne. If, for argument's sake, Hastings was under lockdown, but Eastbourne was still running a parkrun, people could still come across. So, and we don't want that, and Parkrun don't want that. So it's looking at the whole picture. So it was good to get down and see some of the guys again, and see yourself face to face rather than via technology, and just have a general chat with people, really, and just find people's thoughts of what's like, what could happen, and what the plan is going forward. So there's lots to discuss.
Yeah, and I think the underlying message is that let's not get anybody's hopes up just yet. Even when it's announced by Parkrun HQ that there will be a full resumption within the UK, it would still take probably 4 weeks or more to actually do all the preparation to get everybody up and running. So there's still going to be a waiting period. But it's exciting news that they have submitted the documentation to the right ministry. They've obviously got some feedback, and now we're just waiting to see if the government are going to change COVID guidelines between now and whenever it's deemed safe enough that all park runs across the HQ, across the UK, as you said, are able to open. So yeah, it's just basically, just stay tuned and keep up with the not park runs. Yep. Next in the news, Mo Farah breaks the 1 hour record, and this was just insane. So we've got Mo Farah, and actually should also mention Sifan Hassan shattered the men's and women's world records at the 1 hour run attempt. So this was at the Diamond League Brussels event just a few days ago, wasn't it? And yeah, even though he has sorry, just say, even though he has so many accolades, he has never until that point actually broken a world record. So it's absolutely fantastic. Sorry, go on, Sam.
And it was really the bit that I find very interesting is the fact that he broke the record by 45 meters, which, when you consider that the half marathon record, I believe, just off the top of my head, is about 57 minutes, 56, 57 minutes, probably slightly longer. So a half marathon, which is 13.1 miles. I wouldn't even want to. It's 21k, and the fact that they only ran 330. He only ran 330 meters further in that extra bit of time. So it's finding that they can run that distance in that time. But considering that the half record is quite a bit shorter than if it was 59 minutes and 12 seconds, then to do the extra bit, you've got 45 seconds. It's how much further they can run in that 45. Yeah. But it's just mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling.
It is. So according to the data that I've got, it's 21.33 kilometers in 1 hour. And absolutely fantastic that Bashir Abdi, his training partner, finished second at 21.322 kilometers, and so he is now number 2 in the farthest distance reached within 1 hour. Just incredible. And then looking at the women's race, and we've got Hassan, who ran away from the world marathon record holder Brigid Kosgei, if I've got that correct. And we're looking at 18.517 kilometers. Oh, sorry, 18.93 kilometers. Again, just an incredible speed. Now, I went out for just over an hour's run this morning, and I think I managed about 12 kilometers in the hour. And when you're looking at Mo Farah's record in particular, it's looking at 4 minutes, 32 seconds per mile. I mean, that's just incredible. Each mile for half a marathon. It's incredible. But then that's why they pay him megabucks, and everybody knows his name.
Yeah, and they don't know ours.
And they don't know ours. Right, sorry, just to cut back into the comments. Here we've got one. Doctor, every time I drink a cup of hot chocolate, I get a sharp stabbing pain in the eye. Try taking the spoon out first.
And you know what? That is the person who's commented on that may be related to someone that we might be talking to later.
As is this individual as well. Doctor, I feel invisible. Who said that? My son, for those that didn't quite get that. All right, next up in the news, we've got Alford man misses out on a world record for 24 hours on the treadmill. I mean, this just seems like a completely insane thing to do. I know I've run the treadmill. Just before we came on the show, we were talking about different types of park runs and which ones we found the most mind-numbing. But I think running on a treadmill, that takes some dedication, real mental discipline. We've got Carl Craig, who just missed out running on a treadmill for 24 hours, and it was due to a hip injury. So he got to the 16-hour mark and then just had to abandon it. So that's incredible. 16 hours of running on a treadmill.
I take my hat off to anyone that can run on it. I call them dread mills because I physically cannot stand. I think probably I struggle to run a 5K on a treadmill purely for the fact it's not as interesting as running out in the open space and outdoors. It's not for me, but it has a purpose in exercise and for people that are recovering from injury, which we'll talk about later, and people that are new to running and want to, get in and run at a certain pace. So it's very good for that. But 16 hours on a treadmill is bonkers.
Yeah, as I say, it takes some kind of discipline, a certain type of mindset to do this kind of challenge. But they're out there, and crikey, good luck if you can ever get back onto the treadmill and keep it going. Looking at the next news item, the world's oldest marathoner celebrated in News Kids book, which is just incredible tale to have come across. So we've got, forgive me for the pronunciation, Fauya Singh Fauya Singh, I think that's how you'd say it. So he's 101 years old. They say he's just run his last marathon at 101, which is just incredible. And so they've put a picture book together. It's mainly aimed at children. I think we've got a cover for it. Looks a little bit like that. And it's just such an inspiration. And he's focusing on persevering against racism and ageism and ableism. And at 101, just being able to complete a marathon. I mean, I've done one last year, and it near crippled me. But to keep going, I'm supposedly 45, prime of my life, maybe, but to keep going at 101 years old. Simon, can you even imagine doing that at 100 years old?
I would love to be in a position where I get to an age of seniority, more senior than I am today. And I am younger than you, Ray. I'm just going to throw that out there. I probably don't look it with this receding hairline. But if I can get to any kind of age in the future and know that I can run a marathon or half marathon, I've got a funny feeling I ran a London marathon and he was running the same one. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I've got a funny feeling he was. But to 101, to run a marathon anyway, the pressure it puts on your joints and on your body, and you're physically and mentally draining. But for him to do that at 101, where obviously the body is more worn down more, shall we say, but he obviously keeps himself in tip-top condition to do that. So take my hat off to him. Brilliant.
Incredible. It'll be interesting to find out, are there things that we can do to help propagate that in our own lives, that we could actually keep on going for longer? Or is it just down to genetics and who knows, the elements? But let's find out shortly. And also, an interesting item that came up this week as well is the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is actually getting involved in running.
Oh, wow.
So he's got a personal trainer. His personal trainer is giving advice, which is all a bit curious. But we were, chatting before the show, and actually, it seems to be a very positive thing that if the PM's getting on board with running as well, it would really help us too. I think we need champions across the board, and of course, we look to the sports sector to find, our up and coming stars, Mo Farah, for example, who we spoke about earlier, to really help promote the sport and represent them at all levels, but to actually have the Prime Minister stepping in and also imparting advice and making it a bit more public, it can only be a massive boon to the running industry, and the running clubs, the running as a whole.
Yeah, I think there's been a massive. As we discussed the other day, there's been a huge. Jamie Oliver started it when he was attacking schools for their turkey Twizzlers and all of that. The diets at schools. So this is, I think, a lot of it is the obesity crisis that's been talked about in the media. That as a nation, as a world, we are getting larger. And when you are overweight or when you are carrying excess weight, it increases the chances of other underlying medical conditions. So if you can mitigate that, it will obviously, stave off things like diabetes, any obesity related illness. It's just gonna get rid of all of that, really. So. But I'm sure we'll be talking about this in a little bit more detail shortly.
Yes, that's right. It's just interesting that the personal trainer that he's got, he says that if there was one piece of equipment that you should train with at home, so assuming that you can't actually get out and about, and he said a kettlebell, which I thought was quite an interesting one. So he just says it's a fantastic full body training tool that allows you to constantly change up your routine without getting bored. So there you go. The Prime Minister's personal trainer has recommended kettlebell. And it'd be interesting to see if the sales of kettlebells have gone up on Amazon over the last week since that was announced. Right, so let's get on with bringing in our two amazing GPs serving in the NHS, and we just say major kudos for that as well. But equally, very, very keen runners. And in fact, one of them was the sub-22 pacer on a park run at Eastbourne for my very first sub-22 attempt. Needless to say, I couldn't keep up with him. Even though he was at a constant pace, I just didn't have the legs, and I don't hold it against him. But let's bring in Fenella and Johnny. Fenella and Johnny, hi, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Fantastic to have you. Doing great. I think just as time goes on, beginning to just settle into these types of things and just really enjoying it. But just loving this topic tonight because my body just seems to be undergoing problem after problem after problem. I know that I didn't bring you on to talk about my problems, but it's something that every runner faces. Whether it's from couch to 5K, going up all the way through to seasoned runners. So the one thing is that we're stressing the body. The more stress we get, the things happen. So whether it's adaptation or it begins to lead to pain leading to injury, it's something that we face. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have is how do we deal with it when we find those indicators, and is there anything we can do to offset that and mitigate the types of injuries that we can get? And it's fantastic to bring you on the show to be able to talk about these things, but it'd just be great if you could both just introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit more about who you are and your background, please.
Okay,
Go first.
okay. I'm Fenella. I'm a GP in Bexhill part-time, so I've got 4 children who are now grown up. And I started doing parkrun in 2012 when there was about 35 people. So I did quite well then, but I don't do so well now. But I have done 250. And that's it, really.
I'm Johnny. I'm a GP in Eastbourne at the Prince's Park Health Centre. I've got my 100 parkrun t-shirts. I've not done as many.
Good try.
I've got my 25 volunteer t-shirt as well, but most of that's through pacing. I've done lots of pacing.
Fantastic.
And we both do a lot of running. I'm captain of Run Wednesdays, and at the moment training for Beachy Head Marathon. Fenella's training for the South Downs Way 50, they're both on the same weekend. So doing lots of miles at the moment.
Wow. So I've just kind of asked, so you're going to do the full marathon, Beachy Head Marathon, later this year. And I had a look at their recommendations for COVID security for the race. How do you feel about it? They must have put together quite a comprehensive guidance to be able to mitigate the risks.
It's certainly going to change the whole event because the main thing is they've said there's no spectators. You can't go along to support. And they're changing the start area last year it was just on the road in front of Helen Gardens. This year, everybody's got to meet in St Andrew's School playing fields, and in groups of 10 or 12, I think, being moved up to the start line, a minute before you're off. And they're setting people off at kind of 30-second intervals in groups. So it's quite a logistic problem, I think, for them. And they've said in places on the course there's to be no overtaking, which I think is very difficult to police, but people will have to try and respect it, I guess. There'll be places in the forest where there's narrow paths, and you just have to stay behind the person in front and take to the hill. So it's more of a time trial and a bit of a procession rather than a race.
Sure.
So I don't think I will do as well as I've done before, but it's it's the annual challenge that we have to do.
But I think it's good to go with that mindset as well, knowing that you're not going to try and get a personal best or a personal record on this particular trial, but it is about the participation, supporting the event, supporting the local development of running as well. So I think that's, it's kudos. Unfortunately, I've just not been able to get cracking on with the training, so I've deferred mine till next year. So yeah, I can wuss out a little bit. Try something a little bit easier instead.
Yeah. And of course, they've moved the half to the weekend before, and the 10K is the day before. So there's 3 separate days of events rather than doing it all on the one day.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
It makes sense they've obviously moved it so that there's less people in the area at one time. So I'm just gutted I can't run it myself this year. That's a shame.
Why not?
He's got a baby on the way.
Oh, yeah.
The reason for the viewers out there.
Yeah, the due date of my third child is a couple of days after the event. So I don't want to be getting halfway round like Bo Peep and then suddenly getting a phone call. And I'm like, I'll be there in 2.5 hours, love. I'll see you in a bit. I'm not doing that.
Oh, you should have a helicopter on standby to chopper you in to DGH. It'll be fine, I'm sure. I just got a spare 5 to 10 grand in your pocket. So comments, please, for the viewers out there, please let us know. Do you actually have any races that are coming up in 2020 that you're actually sticking to? Do you feel comfortable racing with the COVID guidelines that are in place? It would be great to find out where you're at. And are you doing anything different in your training as a result of it, or are you just going with it? Is it a battle of the mind more than it is a battle of the body? But yeah, it'd be good to know what you're doing. Please do comment away. I do know that one of our guys that we're talking about in the rehearsals, a very good friend of mine, Duncan Taylor, he managed to miss the window of deferring his Beachy Head Marathon participation by about 3 days. And they said, no, that's it. We had the cut off. You cannot do it at all. But he rang them up and said, but I've just been stented, had a heart attack, and they were very understanding. So they've actually pushed him into 2021. So that's good. That's good nice for him. So it gives him plenty of time for recovery, and hopefully, as you can see what I've done there, brings it nicely into dealing with everything from illness to injury, recovering from surgery. And I think what we should say from the outset, Johnny and Fenella, that you yourselves have said that you are not sports specialists, but I know that anybody working in the medical profession is so well grounded in a variety of the anatomy, because you have to be, especially at the GP level, so that we are still very much looking forward to the advice that you have. And I think the first question we've probably got to bring in is, when we're dealing with running, dealing with pains, it's how do you assess the level of pain before you need to really take a step back and say, okay, the pain has become an injury and I really need to stop?
I think we should take it back a little bit, actually, and think about what pain is. And it's kind of nature's way of indicating that something's not quite right. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, and every runner will experience pain at some stage in training and racing. I think Mo Farah must have had quite a lot of pain at the end of his hour-long run on Friday night. So everybody experiences pain, and what we were thinking about is when people are starting running. When the couch to 5K people, somebody that's coming along, taking up parkrun for the first time, inevitably you're going to be using new muscles, new new exercise, it's going to put strain on joints and ligaments and tendons and things that haven't necessarily been used in that way for quite a long time. And so you will get niggles and aches and pains. And everybody, if even the best highly trained athletes, if they do a really hard session, 2 or 3 days later, they're going to get what's known as DOMS, delayed onset muscle stiffness, which is just normal. It's nature's way of saying, actually, you've done a bit too much and you need to rest and ease off a little bit. So everybody gets pain, and as you kind of do more and more, you're going to get more pains, and it's when your pain gets to a critical point, you have to think about, you've got to do something about it, and that's what we talked about.
Yeah, so we were saying that if you're looking at a newly developed pain, so what you would be worried about would be something that came on really suddenly whilst you were running, and that would be a warning sign. Or if you were getting pain that became worse and worse whilst you were running to such a point that you had to stop. That said, sometimes inflammatory pains will get a little bit worse before they get better. So if that does happen and you can just ease off the intensity, but then just keep going gently and it feels a bit better, I don't think that would be an unreasonable thing to do. If you were getting a pain that was progressively worse and worse, and as soon as you started running, then you might have to question that and go and see somebody and get them to examine your whichever bit was causing you pain. And sometimes actually it's not the bit that's causing you pain that's causing the problem. So if you get knee pain, sometimes it's because of your hip or your back or whatever. So, you probably would need to see somebody who is looking at all of your bits and all your bits.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember when I was younger, and I used to have terrible groin problems when I used to play a lot of football, and I had a lot of groin problems. So I went and saw a specialist, and they said I had flat feet. So for me, it was the groin problems were caused because of having flat feet and sunken arches and things like that. So just putting a wedge underneath or having an insole that lifted those up, instantly the pain disappeared. So as you said, it might be that you've got a pain in one area, but it could be that because something in another area is not right, which I think is definitely good. I've got several friends that have tried to run through pain recently, and I've said to them, look, you need to stop or get some professional advice. So they've been to see their GP or been referred to a physio, or just someone who is a bit more knowledgeable in that area. So it's one of those things. So one of the questions I've got for you, Johnny and Fenella, is how, if you've got a pain that in like a different area. So I know that, so let's say it's a wrist injury or a shoulder injury. And, normally if you're going out running, it's not necessarily an issue, but like with a shoulder injury, it's the movement of running. How would you, try and mitigate those injuries and, or running with that type of injury?
I think if you've got a new injury, the natural kind of progression is that it is very painful to start with, and that will stop you from doing the exercise that brought the injury on. And the natural process is that it gradually will improve, and as you start to feel an improvement, that's the time to start getting it moving again. If you suppose you injure a shoulder or an ankle, if you twist an ankle, and you don't do anything with it, the injury will heal in a stiff way. I was taught that if you damage a tendon and you try and repair it, it's like trying to stitch two paintbrushes together. And if you just leave it as an injury, then it knots up and just forms a knot. Whereas if you stretch it out and exercise it gently, pull it back into position, then it mends in the right way. So if you've got a painful injury, you don't just stop and do nothing. You have to keep it moving and gently moving that joint and that ligament to keep it in the right position. And then over time, you gradually build up and get stronger again. And you've got to keep the strength of the muscles either side of that injured ligament or tendon.
And so would again, one of the things I'm quite an advocate of is, if I am injured, because I've done other things apart from running, I will, if I'm injured and it stops me doing one thing, I'll try and navigate to other things that I would do. So cross training. So would you, is that, are you an advocate of that as well?
Definitely. That, if you can't run because of an injury, there's plenty of other exercises that you can do, and generally runners want to keep their fitness, their cardiovascular fitness going, and so you've got to find something different that you can do that doesn't necessarily strain that particular joint. I mean, most running injuries are in the legs, aren't they? Ankles, knees, hips, and so if you can't run because of that, then you can go swimming, you can sit on a bike and cycle, either in the gym or go out on the roads, or rowing. The rowing machine, the ergometers at the gym are very good forms of cardiovascular exercise. So keep doing something, but rest the joint that's sore, but keep gently exercising it.
So we're talking about rehab predominantly, but of course there's a progression towards rehab, because I think the acronym that goes around it's circulated is the RICE method, isn't it? So rest, ice, compression, elevation. That should be the immediate application after a run. And I think before you even get on to finding out that it is an injury that you need to look at rehab, one of the problems probably is the mental battle, is the mindset that says, well, I'm partway through a program, so maybe it's Couch to 5K, they've made good progress, maybe they've even managed to tackle that really tough week in week 6 where they're trying to put 2 12-minute sessions together and run non-stop for 20 minutes. Or it's looking at, you're progressing for a PB on a 5K or a 10K, a half marathon, whatever it may be. The problem being that you've made so much progress, you do not want to stop. So you may have a niggle, you may have pain, you're trying to RICE it, and then you're looking at alternatives for pain management. So it could be a case of not overdosing, but too much ibuprofen, trying to take the edge off of the pain. Then you're looking at strapping the joint using knee support, etc.
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt you, but ibuprofen is not a good idea for anyone who's doing strenuous exercise anyway, because it's not good for your kidneys, and your kidneys are going to be under strain when you're exercising vigorously anyway. So I would always avoid anti-inflammatories, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen anyway.
Okay, so is there... No, that's great. I mean, is there an alternative that you would recommend?
Paracetamol is the safest. You can use ibuprofen in gel form, topical, which is fine.
Okay,
which is useful for kind of small joints. It's not so good for hips and less good for knees, really. But if it's a tendon around the knee, patellofemoral syndromes or IT band things, if you can find the tender point and massage it really well with a bit of ibuprofen gel, that's not ever going to do any harm.
Sure. I know from experience, having gone through patellofemoral pain syndrome this year, that just trying even the topologicals, it just never seemed to touch it. But going to a point that Fenella, you made earlier, it's a case of trying to look at the balance in the system, and it's not necessarily that the knee itself was damaged, but actually it was a misalignment further up. It was in the hip. It was a tight IT band, and once that was exercised, and then, as you said, Johnny, the muscles around the knee were strengthened again, then everything comes back into alignment, but it does take time.
So one of the things that we were talking about before was about how we all run in a slightly in a unique way. So we've all got just slight imbalances, all of us. And you know that because you'll see somebody and you'll spot them in the distance because you notice the way that they run. And sometimes if you don't look after your whole system with cross-training or stretching or, doing something that isn't just running, you can get those little imbalances causing a contraction or an irritation in a certain area, a certain muscle block or tendon or whatever, and that perpetuates after time and then causes a problem somewhere else. So that's why the cross-training and yoga are all so good for you. Yoga, because I'm a fan of yoga and I think it's really good for you. But
you've just beaten me to my question, because I was going to say what kind of exercises and what kind of other things could people do to potentially mitigate injuries. And I know you're an avid yoga fan, so please tell me more about that.
I mean, yoga is something that you can do to any level. So if you're not bendy, unless you've got some sort of specific structural issues, but as long as you are, otherwise well, you can do it to any level. And there are so many different little sessions that you can look up on YouTube for any level, and you don't have to be able to tie yourself up like a pretzel to get any benefit from it. So, I mean, it encourages you to strengthen your core and to stretch your joints through their normal range of movement, and that's what we don't do generally in day-to-day life and in running, because in running they're mostly moving in a very specific range of movement. So you need to move your hips through their full range of movement, and your knees and your ankles and even your feet, for them to stay healthy, because otherwise you end up with little contractures. And, everybody says runners have tight hamstrings. Well, that's the way to mitigate that if you want to.
Yeah,
and keep your body balanced.
Yes, and as you said, that we're all very different. So whilst coaches would advocate very good running form, so everything in terms of alignment of how you hold your head when running, your arm movement, the rotation of the upper body, and then looking at the predominant structure that's actually dealing with the running from the hips downwards, how your cadence is, but the form in which your foot strikes the ground can all have an impact. We were talking earlier about I think it was 2012 Olympics with Mo Farah, and fantastic race, by the way, that he won, gold medal, brilliant. But it was just looking at the cohort of runners that were all around him, and how they run is very, very different. And as you said, Ella, that everybody is different, but you were also saying that if you took a mirror image of your body, sliced it in half, your left side is not an exact reproduction of your right side, and therefore you have some little idiosyncrasies that exist within the system. And I guess it's just a case of how much training, how much stress you're putting into the system. Those idiosyncrasies will actually cause injuries.
Yeah, I think the knock-on of that slight imbalance, it's fine for a little while, and probably for younger people, they can get away with it for a bit longer than us oldies can. But then after a while, it's going to put a bit of strain on the other bit, the bit that takes the other half of the balance of that muscle block, whichever one it is.
Yeah, and I think when you're facing pain and then you're worried about going off injured, the runners in their mindset will be, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose a lot of my performance. And the research actually shows, though, that it's not an instantaneous loss. And I just wondering if you just share some thoughts around that, please.
Yeah, I think everybody's different in the amount of training that they do and how fit you get. So really kind of high performance peak elite athletes will lose their fitness quite quickly because they're training every day and doing enormous amounts of stuff. Whereas a couch to 5K starter is going to build up their fitness and improve dramatically over the course of their 12-week program. But if they were having to stop for a week or two in the middle of it because of an injury or a niggle, then they're not going to lose that fitness. And if they can do something just slightly different to maintain their cardiovascular fitness, then they'll be fine to carry on. But we're going back to those, the couch to 5K starters. They are going to get niggles and aches and pains and things in their joints. And I think they shouldn't be put off and to automatically stop running because they're getting those. As we said at the beginning, they're normal signs of a warning that if you carry on doing that particular thing, it's going to cause more problems. So you've got to just readjust, rethink, reset, but to keep going, keep exercising. And the stronger you get, the better the pains will be. And as your fitness develops, then the pains will probably go away.
Yeah, and certainly for the Catch to 5K runners on a few forums that I've frequented over the past few months, that is one of the questions that comes up time and time again is, well, what do I do? And half the advice seems to be advocating use of straps and supports. And I've tried it myself, but it actually doesn't seem to solve anything long term. It just gives you maybe a temporary relief from the pain that's there at the moment, but actually it doesn't seem as though it corrects the underlying issue, and surely that's got to be the thing you've got to target first. And just throw that back to you two, if I may.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't cure or treat. All it will do is just put a stopgap. So what you've got to be doing is addressing what the actual issue is that's causing the whatever it is pain. So it's like you need to be strengthening, exercising, probably not running, whatever the muscle group is that's causing the problem. And you might need advice from a physio for that, to find out exactly what the best exercise would be to do to fulfill that. But yeah, putting a strap or a support on is not going to treat, and it's not going to cure at all.
Sure, but even if it was a temporary thing, Simon, I know that you were saying that for certain ankle sprains that you found it very useful immediately to put one on just to survive, say, 24 hours, 48 hours until you can then deal with it.
Yeah, I think just if I'm not running, but I have worn a support, if I've twisted my ankle, I very much roll my ankles when I run quite a lot, especially on uneven ground. So I've been on many runs with everyone on this chat today, and the amount of times I've run on the downs with Johnny, and it's and I've just rolled my ankle and it just hurts. So I've whacked a support on, probably just for the first 12 hours. Take it off at night. If it's still sore the next day, put it on the next day. But then it's no more than 48 hours of it. But after 48 hours, it's off. But it won't be on solidly for 48 hours. I honestly, Gov.
The way to look at it is that actually you're supporting it artificially from the outside, and what you need to do is maintain the strength and the alignment of the individual tendon and the muscles either side and keep them strong, and it will mend on its own. You don't need to do anything externally to it. Just keep stretching gently, exercising, and keep it all strong.
So what you're doing, Simon, there is that you're doing that so that you can keep on bashing the joint away with a run, aren't you?
No. Yeah, I probably have done it because it's predominantly been when I've been training for a particular event. And I remember a few years ago when I did my first Ironman, that I was having very sore ankles, but I had to get the training in because it was such a mental event. So yeah, I might have worn a support or two. Sorry. I promise I won't do it again, though.
You've lived to tell the tale, which is amazing.
So just to move away from injury, and obviously with everything that's been going on in the world with COVID, a lot of people have been ill, and some people have been ill, but it's just been the common cold or a bit of a tickly throat or something like that, or hay fever has been a big thing over the last few months as well. So I've always been told when I'm running, anything from there, if I'm ill and it's from there up, it's fine, but there down, stop. Now that's probably an old wives' tale, but please, if you're ill, just tell me what I can and can't do, please.
Okay, so we would advocate that if you have a high temperature, that you should not probably do vigorous exercise. Okay.
I'm okay.
If you've got a cold or even a cough, but you haven't got a temperature, and you're up and about and doing things, then gentle exercise will very unlikely do you any harm and will probably do you some good. I wouldn't suggest that anyone who's got any viral illness should be hammering out a PB anywhere, parkrun, marathons, whatever, even if you don't have a temperature. But if you're not ill in as much as you're up and about, then yeah, exercise is not going to do you any harm as long as you don't go crazy. However, if you have a high temperature, you should not be doing vigorous or more than very gentle exercise, shall we say.
But if you haven't got a temperature and you go out and get some fresh air, actually it does you some good. So to get the heart rate up a little bit, to just feel slightly breathless, so you can just do that brisk walking or a very gentle run for a mile or two, just to stimulate the circulation, and it helps you fight the infections.
So is there anything that, again, as with injury, anything we can do, like we talked about yoga, which can help, keep the body more supple and, potentially prevent injury? Is there anything we can do as individually that we can do to, help our immune system and, fight back anything on a grander scale?
I think the most important thing actually is just to keep fit. The people that are watching this, hopefully, are parkrun converts and will be reasonably fit anyway. And just to have a level of general cardiovascular fitness helps your immune system. You can help it in other ways as well. A healthy, balanced diet is important, and that really includes the breadth of vitamins and minerals and things that you need in the diet. So you don't want to go to kind of faddy diets and where you're not getting enough vitamins and minerals in the diet. People are advocating plant-based diets, and there's a lot of evidence that they help in many ways, but you have to again be very careful that you are getting enough iron and vitamin B12 and other vitamins that aren't necessarily present in the things that you're eating. Apart from that, any other?
Yeah, I would just say cut down on the red meat.
Yeah, cut down on red meat.
Sorry.
And you mentioned right at the beginning weight, and weight is such an important thing that if you're carrying excess weight, the fat cells in the body have an inflammatory action that has a knock-on effect in all sorts of ways. You're much more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke. Blood pressure will be high. Diabetes is the really big problem for the health service because it's such an expensive thing to deal with all the medication and complications. And if people can look after their weight and lose a small amount or a lot of weight, then they can do a lot of benefit for them in all sorts of ways. We've got a guy that runs for us at Run Wednesdays who 2 years ago was a diabetic on a whole host of medication, had high blood pressure. He looked terrible, and he's taken up running and he's managed to lose 5 stone in weight. He's now not taking any medication and he's cured his diabetes. So it is possible. I mean, he's had to go through a lot of extreme measures to do that, but he's achieved it, so it can be done.
So running can quite literally save your life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, so that's amazing. That's just even that. I've lost. I think when I started running back in 2008, I think it was, I was touching on 18 stone, and at my lightest weight, I was just over 14 stone. So, and I know that, and that was when I was at the peak of my fitness. I'm a long way away from that at the moment, but I won't eat that bag of chocolates I've got saved downstairs now.
It's really all about being sensible, isn't it? It's sensible eating, not eating too much of anything,
not drinking too much alcohol.
An occasional glass of wine or beer is fine, but don't overdo it.
Well, we're always told about the red wine is the antioxidants in there. I mean, is that an old wives' tale? Is there actual research out there?
No, it's absolutely true. There's what's known as the J-shaped curve, that if you have no alcohol at all, your risk of heart disease is greater than somebody that has a glass of wine once in a while.
Right.
He's looking for the wine.
Once you go past 2 glasses of wine a day, then it's a greater risk. So
it was just a weird thing. Just a little bit about my background. Myself, my family were living in Kazakhstan. I was working for a university over there. Because it's such an arid country, so very dry, that if I drank alcohol over there, I got blinding headaches. So I kind of went off all forms of alcohol, and coming back here, I already touched the stuff. But after what you've said, I've just got to get back on some red wine. My life depends on it.
I'm going down the shop to buy a bottle of red.
Yeah, I think it's just been great. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show, and just echoing Natalie's words, saying it's just been amazing advice. Very informative. I've learned some new things as well. So hopefully you viewers will be able to take some things away. I'm just wondering, just for a moment, Bob Taylor has written this question. It just says, what can be done for a trapped nerve in the shoulder? Now, I'm not sure if that can be a running question, but I've just thought, for 30 seconds, maybe you'd like to just say, get along to your GP or try a cold compress. I don't know. What would you say?
It's interesting. Back pain and neck pain and things like that. The evidence is actually the best way to resolve it depends on the patient's belief. That if somebody wants to go and have some physio, it will probably help. If they want to go and see a chiropractor, it will probably help. If they want to take pills for it, it will help. So actually, there's all sorts of different ways of dealing with that sort of problem. But you've got to go and probably, if it's been going on for more than a few weeks, you've got to go and see somebody about it and have a chat.
So there you go, Bob Taylor. I hope that answers your question. If not, get in touch with the show and we'll deal with it that way. So I think the biggest takeaway message is that for the heart and for the joints, running it just seems to be a completely indispensable tool for improving health. And I think, as we said a few shows ago, Simon, we're talking about mental health as well. So I think they just go hand in hand when you're taking care of the body and the mind as well. It's an all-round good living.
Yeah, and actually, it doesn't have to be excessive. The guidance is if you can do 30 minutes of vigorous exercise 5 days a week, or not even vigorous exercise enough to just get your heart rate up, then that has a beneficial effect on your whole well-being. And that doesn't have to be 30 minutes all in one go. It can be a 10-minute walk to work and a 10-minute walk at lunchtime. So you can break it up, and you don't have to go overboard and spend hours and hours running. You can do a park run, and if you do 1 or 2 other runs in the week and walk upstairs instead of using the lift, all those little things will add up.
And the good thing about a park run is that it's all inclusive. So when we come back, it doesn't matter if you walk, jog, run, sprint, crawl on your hands and knees, get a piggyback from someone, it's all inclusive. So, even those walkers and we have got a lot of walkers at Eastbourne now, getting them involved, if all the people that think they can't do it because we're not a runner, come along, just come and do it.
If you're injured, you can volunteer, can't you?
Exactly, you can volunteer as well.
Yeah. Now I've seen people running with buggies running past me at lightning speed. They're hardly breaking sweat. I've seen people doing a 3-legged race at a park run. But I've never seen a piggyback at a park run. Have you? I'm just curious.
I'm just going to start a new trend. I'm just starting a new trend. That's it.
And do you swap at the halfway point, or do you alternate kilometers? I mean, how would you do it?
That's a good point. It's got me thinking now.
Great.
Let's put it this way. If I'm doing a piggyback race, I'd rather have Fenella on my back than Johnny.
Yeah, I'd like to see you swap over at halfway there.
I can't carry you.
No, I'll do the whole 5K. Don't worry.
That's fine.
Fantastic. I kind of missed out on this earlier to open it up to the audience. So I think Fenella and Johnny, I think I'm just going to target you with these questions, if I may. It's supposed to be the running fact quiz, and it was don't Google, it's just for fun. Just wondering whether you knew, can you name, say, 3 of the top 5 most commonly occurring running injuries?
IT band syndrome.
Okay.
Plantar fasciitis.
Yep.
Hurt your back from leg. Oh no, that's me.
A hamstring injury, probably.
Okay, that's 3. What is cuboid syndrome?
Well, now that's an interesting one. Cuboid syndrome. The cuboid is a bone in the middle of the foot, and particularly if you twist your ankle, like Simon does, if you roll your ankle over, the bone in the middle of the foot becomes a little bit mobile, and actually it dislocates up and down as you walk, and it causes pain in the middle of the foot and on the outside of the foot. It's notoriously difficult to diagnose, apparently. You can have it, a physio or a chiropractor or somebody like that who's good at manipulating injuries can pop it back into place for you, and that resolves the problem.
Yeah, that sounds hurty.
Yeah.
No.
And finally, do you know the injury that ruined Usain Bolt's farewell race at the 2017 World Championships?
No.
No. Okay. Let's just bring up the answers and we can double check. So you said patella fasciitis. Yeah. You also said IT band.
Yeah.
Chondromalacia patella.
Yeah.
Chondromalacia patella. Yes. So you got 3 out of 5. Well done. Cuboid syndrome, I think it's exactly as you said. It says a small wedge-shaped bone. This one, where I got my information from, outside of the foot, but hey, and it causes pain. But you gave a much more in-depth description of it. And it was hamstring tear. Hamstring tear. So yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the show, and just want to say, Johnny and Fenella, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. Just been great to interact, and certainly, you know, your input has just been incredible. I personally have taken quite a lot of new information on board, and yeah, it's just been great.
Thank you, Professor Whitby.
Yeah. Thank you. We look forward to getting back to parkrun when it's up and running again.
Definitely.
Yes, yeah. I think
Don't come if you're not well. If you've got corona, don't come.
No. Or if you've got a fever, definitely don't come.
Sorry, if you've got what?
You've got a fever.
Fever, yes, high temperature, definitely stay away. But anything else, I think we're saying that even if you've got the sniffles, getting outdoors, so volunteering has surely got to be the best substitute. If you can't run, volunteer. So it's safe for you, safe for everybody else. Or you can walk it, of course. Yeah. And another big thank you comes in from Juliet. So very informative, just to echo those words. It has been brilliant. So it just leaves me to say to your viewers, thank you for joining in. Thank you for commenting. And you can keep on commenting away when you go into the replay of this on YouTube or Facebook. I'll be picking up on those comments over the coming weeks. It's been great to have you as well, Simon. Wishing you all a very good week ahead in all your running endeavours, no matter what you're up to. And yeah, just to say thank you so much. My name's Ray Whitby for the Aspiring Runners channel on YouTube. Just to say good night. Good night.
Good night.